My name is Sloane Everly, 32 years old. The Frankfurt deal was finally closed. 6 grueling days of negotiations, endless coffee, fluorescent boardrooms, and a tangle of accents that blended into static after hour 10. I had secured the European expansion my boss had been chasing for 2 years. Triumph pulsed through my veins, even as my body ached from the 9-hour flight. My suitcase sat heavy in the trunk of the rental as I steered down the quiet suburban streets I'd grown up on. Mom had insisted I stop by before heading back to my apartment. I knew her well enough to understand what that meant. A quick hug and then being force-fed leftovers. That was fine. I hadn't eaten since the stale pretzels on the plane. The neighborhood glowed in the amber light of the setting sun. Maple Street looked smaller than I remembered, like a childhood drawing held up years later, edges faded, proportions skewed. I pulled into the driveway. The overgrown bushes flanking the garage had finally been trimmed. A small miracle. My black pumps pinched as I stepped out, smoothing my charcoal skirt, brushing travel wrinkles from my silk blouse. I still looked every inch the senior analyst who'd just landed a career-making deal. Grandpa would have been proud. Fishing the garage remote from my purse, I pressed the button. The whir of machinery filled the air. The door lifted inch by inch. My heart skipped, then froze. Empty. The garage yawned back at me, barren except for Dad's old mower and Mom's stack of clay pots. My Challenger, the car I had bled overtime hours for, the car I had cried over when I signed the title, was gone. No, 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 I whispered. My stomach plummeted. The remote clattered to the concrete. My suitcase toppled sideways as I rushed into the house, panic burning through me like acid. The kitchen light was on. They were waiting. Mom at the table, her lips pursed into something meant to look gentle. Dad with his calloused hands spread flat, not meeting my eyes. And Kendra, my younger sister, lounging back with a practiced air of confidence, like this was a panel and she was the keynote. The silence was thick. Mom spoke first, her voice dripping with that saccharine tone she used whenever she had bad news she wanted me to swallow quietly. Sloane, sweetheart, don't overreact. Where's my car? My voice scraped my throat raw. Kendra straightened her shoulders, flipping her glossy hair as if cameras were rolling. It's just temporary, Slow. I'll pay it back. Pay what back? I lowered my voice, each word sharp enough to cut. Where is my Challenger? Mom's eyes darted to Dad. He still wouldn't look up. Dad cleared his throat. We had to make a tough decision. Kendra needed startup capital for her business, and we took it to Cornerstone Pawn, Mom finished softly. My breath caught. You did what with my car? Dad shifted uncomfortably. Got $45,000 for it. Loan, not a sale. Kendra leaned forward. Once my cosmetics line launches, I'll pay it back with interest. You'll have your car back in no time. The room tilted. Images flashed behind my eyes. Me at 23, working 70-hour weeks at Bridgewater while friends posted vacation photos. Grandpa's rough hands guiding mine over an engine, telling me, these machines aren't just metal, Sloane. They're dreams, solid and loud. Someday you'll have your own. The day I finally drove my Challenger home, tears had blurred my vision. It wasn't just a car. It was proof that my sacrifices meant something. I turned my focus on Kendra. I don't care if you bottled the fountain of youth itself. That car wasn't yours to take. Mom's lips tightened. Family helps family. You make good money. Kendra just needs a chance. The betrayal burrowed deeper with every word. So you used my spare key, my title. You forged my signature. That isn't helping. That's fraud. Dad flinched. We're your parents. And you've always supported us equally, Mom added quickly, though her voice wavered. A bitter laugh escaped me. Equally? You want to play that card? My phone buzzed. I pulled it out. A notification from my insurance company, lien placed against vehicle. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was theft. This was erasure. I looked up, my voice steadier than I felt. You have 30 days. 30 days to get my car back, or I press charges. Fraud. Theft. Whatever it takes. Mom gasped. Against your own family? Family doesn't steal dreams, I said flatly. I turned, heels clicking against the tile. Each step was a nail sealing the coffin of what I'd thought family meant. The door slammed behind me, rattling the frames on the wall. Smiling faces and photos blurred through my tears. Snapshots of curated fiction, hiding the truth that in this family, my dreams had always been disposable. The pawn shop reeked of desperation and cheap pine-scented air freshener. I straightened my blazer, trying to project authority, trying to look like a woman who belonged here instead of one whose world was quietly unraveling. My reflection in the dusty glass counter betrayed me. Mascara smudged beneath tired eyes, shoulders slumped with exhaustion. "Miss Everly?" The man behind the counter, Gordon, according to his name tag, slid a folder across to me. His tone carried the practiced neutrality of someone who witnessed financial catastrophes daily. "Your vehicle was brought in 5 days ago. Loan amount, $45,000, plus fees." I flipped the paperwork open. My finance training kicked in automatically, though my pulse roared in my ears. "3,000 in fees already?" I muttered. "That's practically predatory." Gordon's expression didn't flicker. "Classic car market's volatile. We take risks. And if the loan isn't repaid?" After 35 days, we auctioned the vehicle. Full payment required by October 3rd. $48,000 total. The words blurred, my stomach twisting as I turned the page. Then my breath hitched. My signature. Except it wasn't. The forgery was close enough to fool a pawnbroker, same slant, same loops, but it missed the slight upward flick I always left at the end of my name. That tiny imperfection I'd had since high school. "This isn't my signature," I said firmly, sliding my driver's license and a recent contract across the counter. "Compare them." Gordon's discomfort grew visible. "Ma'am, if you're suggesting fraud—" "I'm not suggesting, I'm stating." My voice sharpened. "Pull the security footage. The transaction happened while I was in Frankfurt. Check my passport stamps." His eyes flickered to the side. "I'll need to speak with my manager." "Please do." 20 tense minutes later, the manager arrived. Older, grayer, but no less uneasy. He studied the documents, glanced between my license and the forged paperwork. The weight of his silence said everything. "Ma'am," he said finally, "we can file a police report right now." The word police lodged in my throat. I imagined my parents in handcuffs, Kendra sobbing as flashbulbs popped. A scandal that would scorch the Everly name. "I need time to think," I managed. Back in my apartment, I sank onto the couch without removing my coat. My fingers trembled as I reached for the old photo album on the coffee table, a relic I hadn't opened in years. Plastic-covered memories crackled as I flipped through. Kendra's Sweet 16, a garden party with a professional photographer, a cake taller than she was. I turned the page. Nothing for mine. My 16th birthday had been spent folding jeans at the mall to save for college application fees. Kendra's high school graduation. Dad rented a limousine, the whole family in matching outfits. My college graduation? Empty chairs, where my parents should have been. Their canceled flight excuse crumbling when I saw them at Kendra's dance recital the very next day. Christmas 2018. Kendra standing beside a shiny red Volkswagen with an enormous bow. Me holding a department store sweater to my chest. My smile brittle, eyes deadened. The pattern stretched across years. Not just favoritism, systematic neglect. My phone rang. Uncle Harvey's name lit the screen. He never called unless it was serious. "I just heard," he said, skipping pleasantries. "Your mother's already calling relatives, spinning the story." I rubbed my forehead. "And what's their version this time?" "That you're overreacting. That family helps family." His disgust bled through the line. "This isn't help, Sloane. This is theft." My chest tightened. "I know. I just didn't think they'd go this far." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." After we hung up, Aunt Patricia called. Dad's sister, the family peacemaker. "They were just trying to help Kendra succeed," she pleaded. "Gerald feels terrible. Can't you find some compassion?" The doorbell rang, sparing me from answering. Jessica stood there, holding a bag of Thai takeout. My colleague, my friend. Her eyes flicked over my face, taking in the redness around my eyes. "I brought dinner. You look like hell." For the first time in days, I laughed. Thanks for the honesty. Over spicy noodles, I poured it all out. The pawn slip, the forgery, the empty garage. Jessica's outrage was immediate, refreshing, like cold water on a burn. "They stole your car," she said flatly, topping off my wine. "If anyone else did this, we'd already be at the police station." I stabbed a piece of chicken with my chopsticks. But it wasn't anyone else. It was my family. That makes it worse, not better. Her words clanged in my chest, the truth undeniable. "What does your boss say?" she asked softly. "That family can cut deeper than anyone," I admitted. I'd broken down in his office earlier, something I'd never done in 6 years at Bridgewater. He was giving me space, but space didn't fill the hollow ache in my chest. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Kendra. I need more money to fix this. Please, Slow. Just a little more. I'm desperate. My pulse pounded. Even after all of this, she wanted more. I set my phone face down on the counter, staring at the message like it was a live wire. The coffee shop near Kendra's apartment smelled faintly of burnt espresso and sugar glaze. I chose the corner booth, the one where I could watch the door. My stomach tightened as I scrolled aimlessly through my phone, waiting. When she walked in, sunglasses covered half her face despite the overcast sky outside. Her usual runway stride was subdued, almost faltering. I didn't bother with pleasantries. Let me see the business plan. She blinked. What? The plan, Kendra. Financial projections, supplier contracts, marketing strategy, anything that proves you knew what you were doing before you stole from me. Her fingers toyed with the cardboard sleeve on her coffee cup. It's more fluid than that. Creative businesses. Stop! I cut her off, my patience razor thin. Show me what you have. From her oversized tote, she pulled out a folder. My pulse spiked, a foolish flicker of hope. But when she laid the papers on the table, my chest sank. A mood board of makeup looks, a list of potential product names scrawled in pink marker, crude sketches of packaging. I flipped through each page slowly, anger burning hotter with every turn. This is it? My voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. This is what you took my car for? Her lips trembled. I just needed a chance, Slow. A chance like you had. Everyone always talks about how successful you are, how responsible, how I should be more like you. My jaw clenched. I earned my chance. I didn't steal someone else's dream to fund it. Her shoulders hunched inward. I thought once the business took off, I could pay you back, with interest, make everyone proud. She swallowed hard. But now, her voice cracked. The first shipment came yesterday. Half the containers were cracked. Customers are already complaining online. And the formula, it separates after a few hours. Everything's falling apart. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down. A new text from Kendra. Please, I need more money to fix this. Just a little more. You know I'll pay you back. I'm desperate. When I looked back up, she was watching me, her expression raw and pleading. I set my phone face down. Not a penny more. You fix this, or you lose everything. Her face crumpled. I don't know how. For one dangerous heartbeat, I felt the old tug, the family script where I cleaned up the messes, smoothed the disasters, carried the weight. But then I remembered the yawning emptiness of my garage, the forged curve of my stolen signature. You'd better figure it out fast, I said, rising from the booth. The clock is ticking. The days that followed felt like watching a slow-motion car crash. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications, each one a new fracture in Kendra's business. Day 3. Suppliers refusing further shipments after bounce payments. Day 5. Refund demands, flooding her social media, screenshots of cracked containers circulating online. Day 7. Her business account frozen by the bank. Day 10. Kendra barricaded in her apartment, ignoring calls. Meanwhile, my own career balance teetered on a knife's edge. The Frankfurt acquisition documents blurred on my screen, my concentration shredded by the chaos bleeding from my family. My boss, Director Palmer, called me into his office. Sloane, I need those final projections by 4, he said, concern sharpening his tone. You look exhausted. Everything okay at home? I forced a professional smile, masking the exhaustion gnawing at my bones. Everything's fine. You'll have them within the hour. The lie tasted bitter. Nothing was fine. Sunday came too quickly. I parked the rental on the curb instead of the driveway, a small rebellion that somehow steadied me. The familiar scent of Mom's pot roast drifted through the house as I stepped inside. Dad sat slumped at the table, looking decades older. Mom busied herself with china plates, the good ones she only ever used for Christmas or crises. Kendra arrived last, her designer sunglasses failing to hide the puffiness of her eyes. Her confident aura was gone, replaced by something smaller, shakier. Let's eat while it's hot, Mom said, serving Dad first, as always. We ate in silence, the scrape of forks against porcelain louder than any words. My own pulse thudded in my ears. Finally, Mom broke. She placed her hand gently over Kendra's. She's having a difficult time with her business. Everyone fails sometimes. I set down my fork with deliberate precision. This isn't about failure, it's about theft. Dad's voice cracked. We thought we were helping. His hands trembled as he reached for his water glass. We wanted Kendra to have her chance. At my expense. My words sliced the air. You didn't just take a car. You took everything it represented. Kendra flinched. It was just a vehicle. No. My voice rose, firm and unwavering. It was 6 years of overtime and missed vacations. It was Grandpa's legacy. It was proof that my sacrifices mattered, and you stole it without a second thought. The doorbell rang. A reprieve for them, maybe, but not for me. Dad shuffled to answer it. Uncle Harvey's voice boomed through the hallway before he even entered. What the hell were you thinking, Gerald? He stepped into the kitchen, broad-shouldered and scowling, his gaze locking with mine. Sloane called me, and I came because someone in this family needs to stand up for her. Mom stiffened. This is a family matter. Exactly why I'm here, Harvey shot back, pulling out a chair beside me. You've been throwing her under the bus for years, and now you've crossed into criminal territory. Dad's face reddened. Now wait a minute. No, you wait, Harvey's voice thundered. My hand slid to the briefcase I'd set by the chair. The leather was cool under my fingers as I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. I placed 3 printouts on the table with the weight of grenades: vehicle title, state fraud statutes, pawn shop regulations. This, I said evenly, is a felony. The room went still. Dad's eyes locked on the papers like they were live explosives. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, muffling a gasp. Kendra's sunglasses slid down her nose as she leaned forward, disbelief flickering across her face. A felony? Dad's voice cracked, his weathered hands twitching toward the documents. Title fraud. Identity theft. Up to 5 years in prison, I said, keeping my tone clinical, detached, though my pulse thundered in my ears. Not to mention restitution and criminal record. That's the reality of what you signed your names to. Mom's tears came fast, ragged and unpolished, so unlike the manipulative crying she often used to end arguments. You wouldn't, she whispered, not your own parents. I swallowed hard. I don't want to. God, I never wanted to. But you need to understand this isn't just a mistake or a misunderstanding. You stole from me. For the first time in weeks, Dad finally met my eyes. His own brimmed with something that looked frighteningly like remorse. What have we done to you? He rasped. To us? Beside him, Kendra's facade shattered. She pulled off her sunglasses, revealing eyes red and swollen from days of crying. This is my fault. Her voice cracked, brittle as glass. I pushed them. I knew you'd never agree, so I convinced them it was temporary. I swore I'd pay you back once the business took off. I never thought it would fall apart this fast. Her hands twisted together on the table, manicured nails tapping anxiously against each other. I just wanted one chance to prove myself. I wanted to be enough. The silence that followed was suffocating. Uncle Harvey leaned forward, his voice cutting through like a blade. Well, what's the plan? Because that pawn shop won't wait forever. I straightened in my chair. 25 days left. After that, the auction's final. We need $48,000 total. Immediate deposit of $15,000 to stall the sale. Mom dabbed her eyes with a crumpled napkin. What can we do? I opened my briefcase again and pulled out a calculator. We figure out resources. Every dollar, every asset, every option. Dad cleared his throat. A home equity line of credit. $30,000 maybe, but it'll take 2 weeks to process. Kendra sniffled. I can sell the BMW. Maybe get $12,000 if I'm lucky, and I'll drain what's left in my savings. I hesitated before adding my own piece. I'll commit $6,000 from my emergency fund. No more. All eyes turned to Harvey. He leaned back, arms crossed, weighing us in silence. Finally, he exhaled. I'll loan $5,000, but only because Sloane shouldn't have to shoulder this alone. The math stung. Even with everything pooled, the timeline was brutal. $15,000 was needed up front, and the rest in less than a month. Dad's jaw tightened. I'll call Cornerstone first thing tomorrow. See if they'll extend terms. I looked around the table. The parents who had betrayed me, the sister who had manipulated them, the uncle who had stormed in like a hammer of truth, and me, sitting with proof of their crimes in front of me. I realized then that for the first time I held the power in this family. Not power I wanted, but power they had forced into my hands by breaking every line of trust I thought was unbreakable. And though a part of me longed to rip the papers into shreds, to pretend none of it was real, another part, colder, steadier, knew better. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. I'm not forgiving you, I said quietly. Not yet, but I'll work with you. because I want my car back, because I want proof that I matter too. Dad bowed his head. Mom sobbed harder. Kendra whispered, "Thank you," like a prisoner, grateful for scraps of mercy. But my chest didn't lighten. If anything, the weight grew heavier, the cost of finally being heard pressing down with merciless force. The following week unfolded like a grim montage of sacrifices, each member of the family forced to confront what desperation really looked like. Kendra stood at the glass counter of a luxury consignment shop, her beloved Hermes scarves laid out like casualties. The shop owner, a thin woman with steel gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses, examined each piece under bright lights. "8,000 for the lot," she said flatly, not bothering to look up. Kendra's face tightened, pride warring with panic. "They cost me double that," she whispered. The woman finally glanced at her, expression unyielding. 8. Kendra swallowed hard. "Done." Her voice cracked as the check was written. I knew it was the first time my sister had ever felt the sting of true loss, giving up symbols of status for something as unglamorous as survival. Across town, Dad limped into the warehouse manager's office, the arthritis in his knees flaring with each step. The manager raised an eyebrow. "Night shift? Gerald, you haven't worked nights in 20 years. Dad sank into the chair, his voice low but steady. "Just temporarily. I need the differential pay." The manager studied him for a long beat, eyes lingering on the exhaustion carved into his face. "This about that car situation Harvey mentioned?" Dad's jaw tightened. "Family business." The manager slid paperwork across the desk, starting Monday. At home, Mom wrapped Grandma's silver candlesticks in tissue paper, hands trembling. The candlesticks had survived the Great Depression, had graced the family table for 50 years of Christmases. One by one, she placed them in a cardboard box, along with the pearl necklace Dad had given her on their 25th anniversary. The pawnbroker at Fletcher's barely glanced at them before offering $3,000, just enough to cover the next week's interest payment. Mom accepted with a hollow nod, her wedding ring slipping loosely on her thinning finger. Meanwhile, my sacrifices were quieter but relentless. My boss piled more accounts onto my desk, knowing I was chasing a performance bonus. I nodded, accepted, worked late into the night. I skipped meals, lived on black coffee, and let my apartment sink into chaos. Every spreadsheet I completed, every late-night email I sent was another desperate stone in the wall I was building between myself and total collapse. The deposit receipt from Cornerstone Pawn sat on my desk like a cruel trophy, 15,000 down, auction postponed. A small victory, but the rest of the mountain loomed ahead. Then came the revelation that almost broke us. One evening, Dad spread bank statements across the kitchen table under the harsh overhead light. He squinted, running numbers again and again, trying to balance columns that refused to add up. From the study, Mom's voice floated out, trembling. "Gerald, did you know about these?" I walked in to see her holding a stack of documents, credit card bills, personal loan applications, buy now, pay later accounts, all in Kendra's looping script. $80,000 of hidden debt. Mom's voice cracked. "We had no idea." The room went silent. Even Kendra, usually armed with excuses, sat stunned, her face pale, lips parted. For once, she didn't try to spin it. The reality landed like a hammer. My sister hadn't just gambled with my car. She had been drowning for years, hiding it behind glittering clothes and perfect selfies. A few days later, Dad met me on the porch steps when I came to drop off my portion of the week's payment. For once, Mom wasn't hovering nearby with excuses. He sat heavily, the wood creaking beneath us. "We failed you," he said quietly, his voice rough as gravel. "Not just now, long before we took your car." The words surprised me. I turned to look at him. His weathered hands twisted together. "All those years, we praised Kendra's dreams while dismissing yours. You never asked for much, so we thought you didn't need much. We were wrong." The setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. For the first time, I heard truth in his voice. Not justification, not excuses, but regret. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence linger, the weight of it settling between us. Part of me wanted to scream that it was too late. Another part, the exhausted, hollow part, just wanted acknowledgement. Dad's shoulders slumped further. "I can't change what we did, but I'll work every night shift left in me if it means setting this right." I looked out at the horizon, the air cooling against my skin. I wasn't ready to forgive, but his words cracked something in me. A tiny fissure where light could seep through. The HELOC came through at last, but the bank slapped a 3-day processing delay on the funds. Relief curdled instantly into panic. On the second morning, my phone lit up with a call from Cornerstone Pawn. Gordon's voice was brisk, almost apologetic. "Ms. Everly, I thought you should know. Another buyer is interested in the Challenger. He's offering cash. First money and wins. Business is business." My stomach dropped. "How much time do we have?" "Until noon tomorrow," he said. "No extensions." When the call ended, my hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. The next 36 hours blurred into a frenzy of desperate calculations and phone calls. Mom sold her anniversary diamond earrings, the ones she had once polished proudly before every holiday dinner. The jeweler gave her barely half their appraised value. Kendra emptied her savings and sold designer shoes she had once called investment pieces. Her face burned when the consignment clerk offered a fraction of what she'd paid. I maxed out my emergency credit line, hating myself for the weakness in my hands, as I signed the slip. When we added it all up at the kitchen table, we were still $3,000 short. The deadline loomed like a guillotine. Mom's voice was hollow. "It's not enough. They'll sell it tomorrow." The doorbell rang. Dad opened it to reveal Uncle Harvey standing on the porch, checkbook in hand. He stepped inside, his voice low but firm. "Family helps family, the right way." The relief in the room was palpable, though no one smiled. Harvey sat down, wrote the check with deliberate strokes, and slid it across the table. "This is my limit. Don't ask for more, but Sloane deserves to have what's hers." The next morning, we all crowded into the bank together, the digital clock above the counter ticking toward noon. Dad's hand trembled as he signed the authorization for the wire transfer. Mom's lips moved in silent prayer. Kendra sat rigid, her sunglasses hiding puffy eyes, her hands twisting in her lap. At 11:42, the confirmation appeared on the screen. Payment received. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled. Standing in front of Cornerstone Pawn later that afternoon, I clutched the receipt in my sweaty palm. The early spring sun caught on the chrome trim of my Challenger, gleaming like a phantom returned from the dead. Inside, Gordon recognized me immediately. "Ms. Everly," he said, sliding a folder across the counter. "Here for your vehicle." I nodded, unable to trust my voice. My pen shook as I scrawled my signature on each line. When the cashier's check cleared, he handed me the keys. Cold metal pressed into my palm, familiar weight that made my throat tighten. I almost dropped them. Outside, I traced trembling fingers along the glossy black paint, searching for imperfections, for proof of mishandling. None. The chrome gleamed as if nothing had happened. "They detailed it yesterday," Gordon said from behind me. "Policy before return." I didn't answer. My chest felt hollow, victory ringing false. The engine roared to life, the sound vibrating through the seat, through my bones. Once it had symbolized triumph, freedom, Grandpa's promise fulfilled. Now it felt heavier, tainted, like a scar you couldn't hide no matter how well it healed. What did this car represent now? Not just my work, not just my sacrifices, but the truth I could no longer ignore. My family had seen my dream as disposable. As I pulled away from the pawn shop, tears blurred my vision. Each mile between me and that building peeled loose another fragment of emotion. Rage, grief, betrayal. By the time I reached my apartment, my cheeks were wet, mascara streaking down like war paint. But the Challenger was home, and so was I. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Sunday dinner, 5 p.m. Your father's grilling steaks." The invitation landed like a stone in my stomach. I considered ignoring it, considered typing no and ending the cycle. Instead, my fingers typed, "I'll be there." Some conversations couldn't happen over text. Sunday evening arrived with unnerving perfection. Blue sky, a breeze carrying the smell of lilacs from Mom's garden, the kind of weather meant for peace. Yet as I turned into the driveway, the growl of the Challenger's engine announced me like a battle horn. Dad froze mid-flip at the grill, spatula hovering above a row of steaks. Mom appeared in the doorway, wringing a dish towel until the fabric twisted like rope. Inside, the table was set with the special china again, the same brittle performance as before. Kendra sat with her sunglasses perched on her head this time, her eyes rimmed in red but unhidden. Nobody spoke as I took my seat. The air was thick with everything we weren't saying. Finally, Dad cleared his throat, laying his fork down with deliberate care. "Sloane?" he began, voice stiff as starch. "I've prepared something." From his pocket, he pulled a folded paper, hands shaking. He read each line like a confession. I betrayed your trust. I violated your property rights. I failed in my duty as your father to protect what mattered to you. His eyes darted up, wet and uncertain, then dropped again to the page. Mom's tears slid freely. Please forgive us, sweetheart. We were wrong. So terribly wrong. Then Kendra spoke, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. I've been working at Macy's for 3 weeks now. She pulled a notebook from her purse, its cover bent and ink smudged. I made a budget plan. It'll take time, but every penny will be repaid. I'm trying. They all stared at me then, hope and fear braided into their faces. I let the silence stretch until it hurt. Finally, I set my napkin down. Healing takes time. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. Relief flickered across their features, but no one smiled. They understood this wasn't forgiveness, just the first step. 2 days later, I sat across from Rachel Holman, a lawyer whose card had burned a hole in my wallet for weeks. She adjusted her glasses as she flipped through the documentation. You have a solid case for criminal charges, title fraud, identity theft. Your parents could face serious consequences. I stared at the framed photo on her desk, a smiling family in matching sweaters. Something in my chest twisted. What are my other options? Rachel leaned back. A legally binding repayment agreement. It won't carry the same weight as prison bars, but it will enforce accountability. I nodded slowly. Draw it up. The following Sunday, we gathered again around the dining table. This time, Uncle Harvey sat beside me, his broad shoulders steady, his presence a silent shield. My parents signed the contracts with trembling hands. Kendra's signature wobbled across the line. Monthly payments for 2 years, I explained, my voice steady. With interest. Dad's hand shook as he set the pen down, but when his eyes met mine, they didn't flinch. We'll honor it, every term. For the first time in my life, my boundaries weren't just words they could dismiss. They were black ink on white paper, unarguable. Later, as Harvey walked me to my car, I admitted, I never wanted this kind of authority over them. Sometimes respect has to be enforced before it can be freely given, he said, squeezing my shoulder. A month later, the extended family reunion became a stage for reckoning. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the backyard until Aunt Patricia cornered me by the potato salad, her wine glass tilted dangerously. Everyone makes mistakes, dear. You've made your point. Time to let it go. Harvey materialized beside me like a storm cloud. They need to own what they did, Patricia. No minimizing. The chatter quieted as Kendra stepped forward. Her voice shook, but she stood tall. I manipulated them. I played on their favoritism, but they chose to betray Sloane. We're all accountable. The silence was sharp, then Cousin Mike gave me a solemn nod. Something shifted, truth cracking through decades of denial. Later that week, I changed the garage code at my parents' house and installed a security system in the Challenger. When Mom asked, softly, "Will you leave a spare key with us, just in case?" I met her eyes and held her gaze until understanding dawned. "No," I said simply. "I won't." She nodded, lips pressed thin, acceptance dawning in her silence. Some boundaries needed no explanation. The mountain roads unfurled like ribbons of silver under the morning sun. I downshifted, feeling the Challenger respond with a rumble that vibrated up through the wheel into my bones. 1 year had passed since the garage door lifted to nothing but empty space, and still, driving her felt like coming home. The Rockies rose around me, sharp and endless, their peaks brushed in gold. Windows down, the cool air whipped through my hair, carrying away the last clinging threads of old tension. For months, my shoulders had lived in a permanent hunch, bracing for the next betrayal. Now they loosened with every curve I took. I pulled into a mountain overlook and killed the engine. Silence pressed in, vast and humbling. Below, the valley stretched forever, trees spilling like waves toward distant ridges. I traced my hand along the glossy black paint of the Challenger, each reflection a reminder of what I'd fought for. Not just a car, but proof that my boundaries mattered. Grandpa's words echoed, softer now. It's not the metal, Sloane. It's what it represents. Dad had taken those words to heart, too. Last month, he led me to their garage before I left Sunday dinner. A small addition had been built, a locked bay, alarmed, separate from their own storage. Your car's always safe here now, he'd said gruffly, handing me the only code. For a man of few apologies, it was his way of carving one into stone. Mom had changed in quieter ways. She asked before borrowing so much as a jacket now. Sometimes her requests were simple, an oven dish, a scarf, but the asking itself mattered, a recognition that my things weren't community property, that I wasn't either. And Kendra, every month, like clockwork, she sent me $300. It wasn't much against what she owed, but the consistency spoke louder than grand gestures ever could. Her apartment was small, her wardrobe stripped of luxury labels. She showed me her new budget spreadsheet once, pride lighting her eyes, where once there had only been hunger for approval. "I'm learning what you knew all along," she'd admitted quietly. "Earning feels different than being handed." Uncle Harvey had ridden shotgun with me the week before. As the engine hummed beneath us, he patted the dashboard with his weathered hand. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said, "not just of the car, of the woman who fought for it, and for herself." Later, at Grandpa's grave, I laid fresh flowers and propped a photo against his headstone. 12-year-old me, beaming beside him and the gleaming Challenger he'd promised I'd one day own. "I understand now," I whispered, tears blurring the granite letters. Some dreams cost more than money. These days, I taught a finance class on weekends, 20 young women learning what no one had taught me: how to protect what matters, how to draw lines, how to recognize when giving becomes self-destruction. One teenager, Melissa, lingered after class last month, eyes wide as she admired the Challenger. "My dad used to work on old cars," she said softly. "Before the divorce, my mom sold his tools to pay for my sister's dance lessons." I let her sit in the driver's seat, watching her eyes ignite with wonder. "Dreams need protecting," I told her, echoing Grandpa. "And so do you." The sun warmed my face as I started the engine again. The road ahead curved like an open hand, no longer weighted by guilt or obligation. Boundaries had cost me the illusion of family harmony, but in their place, I'd found something truer: respect, fragile but real. I accelerated onto the highway, windows down, wind rushing in, the Challenger roaring like a hymn. For the first time since I was 9 years old, watching Grandpa's hands guide mine over an engine, I was living my dream without apology.